Hello, and welcome to the Thoughtful Realtor Podcast. This is a podcast where we sit down for insights, stories, and conversations about all things in real estate, running a real estate team in California, and how we find our way as leaders and business partners.
I'm Connie Chung.
And I'm Cliff Sang. We're two of the founders and partners of Willamar Real Estate.
And today our conversation is super exciting because we're going to be talking about something we talk about with our clients all the time, and that's renovations and in particular flipping. And I'm going to be interviewing Cliff about his personal journey of flipping a house here in Oakland, in the Bay Area, California, and all the fun parts of the journey, the challenging bits, and all the lessons learned. So let's get into it. And just
Let's go.
a fun background note about Cliff and your experiences. You've bought many investment properties. We invest together in a building, and this is your first flip. Is that right?
Yes. First time doing a project like with the intention of buying it and then immediately reselling. I've done other ones where we like renovated the home quite a bit, but that was like a buy and hold, like a burr strategy.
Yeah. What inspired you? Let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to buy a home, renovate it for resale?
I think the biggest motivation was just wanting to learn. I think in many ways I try to push myself every year just to take on kind of a new skill, and it's been a little bit in vogue in recent years. But I also just think part of the real estate communities that I've part of, there like more folks have been flipping, and not only has it, I think, shown to be like a lucrative avenue, but also allows you to really kind of grow your skill set. Because I also thought that it'd be a good opportunity to learn about the construction process, as it would make me a stronger real estate investor and also a stronger realtor as well.
Yeah, it's almost like real life business school for flipping a home because you're actually doing it and going through the process. It's a worthwhile investment because if anything, if you don't make your money back, of course you will in some ways, but you are literally paying for hands-on experience.
I feel like you're laughing because, and we'll save it for another conversation, but I know that you have gone through a couple massive construction projects too. So the masters in real estate is, I'm sure you have felt that too. It's just like endless learning and decisions to make.
Yes, definitely. What drew you to Oakland to start your to get do your first flip? Because I know for folks who may not be in the Bay Area, I mean, flipping and even just renovating a home in general in the Bay can be very challenging.
Yeah, I think I was more of like subject to like just the circumstances because finding a good deal on a flip is really difficult. And so the when I had this one kind of fall in my lap and I had to make the decision, I think Oakland wasn't the most ideal, just kind of given some of the stories that I heard of just some, crime that can happen at your job site and those types of things. But I just kind of made the commitment knowing that it might be months before I found another deal like this. And also since I live in Oakland and it's about 10 minutes away, I figured being able to drive there, which has held true, like I go to the job site once, maybe twice a week, has been really helpful for a first
Yeah.
flip.
It's pretty special, yeah, especially for your first project to have it be in the city where you live because you are going to be at that job site nonstop, and also to remove that friction of not knowing the unknowns. Any bit of that you can remove is very helpful. What was
Yeah.
your what was your vision for this flip when you, and also how, for folks who may not know, like what does a good deal look like? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, in terms of good deal, so I think like I tried to kind of be more analytical with it. So, like one thing that I looked at was like price per square foot. So this was a 1,800 square foot home that I got under contract for 600,000 in the Redwood Heights area of Oakland. So nice residential area, a lot of I think first time home buyers in that area, and knowing that this home would also after the flip would sell in that 1.3 to 1.5 range, which is kind of like, I think, a good initial price point for folks in the Bay Area. Like, in other words, I didn't want to be doing a flip that was going to be a $2, $3 million home because it just is more risky as well for a first time flip. Um, So yeah, running the numbers, that comes out to about 333 per square foot, which on a price per square foot basis, that's actually a pretty good deal. And then you could tack on how much you're expecting to spend on the rehab. This project is going to cost about 500,000 to give you a sense. So then just knowing that kind of that all-in cost um, should work out, the math should work out at the end. I felt like it was a worthy one to pull the trigger on.
Yeah. And how quick, because sometimes these opportunities fall into your lap, but you have very limited time to move on them. How, in thinking about the vision, how quick did you have to kind of lay out your projections, and was it pretty easy to do for you, or yeah, how did you navigate that?
It's one of those things that you prep for and you think, okay, well, when this happens, I'm going to be so confident and I'm going to move forward. And then when it actually lands in your lap and you have to make a decision, it's not as easy. But it was quick. I think generally speaking, when a deal lands and you have to make a decision, I think it was like a day or two to kind of decide if I was going to submit an offer. There's a round of counters. So kind of before you know it, like it was, I don't know, Friday. I had no idea. Saturday, it fell in my lap, and by Monday, I was already in contract. And what complicated it too was my wife, Misan. She was like 8+ months pregnant at the time. So when I calculated, like, okay, if we close in 21 days, that was getting really, really close to the due date. And so I had to, at dinner, like prep her and get her blessing too, that if this closes, we might
Yeah.
be at the hospital signing papers.
Wow.
Um, and
And
she
taking
was
on the
very
same risk, not
taking on
alone.
the risk and also doing the project with a newborn and all of that. So, needless to say, yeah, the last year has been quite the whirlwind and pretty busy.
Yeah. I love I love that as a real estate professional too, you're putting money where your mouth is too, because so many of our buyers or so many people are saying like, oh, this is the height of the market. I can't buy now. But for you even to be buying and to investing in the city, it shows like there are always opportunities to be found at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. It's been part of my practice, I think, as trying to become a better realtor is like to try to predict the future less. I think I came into this job thinking, oh, the economists know this, or hey, the textbook says this. And I think I'm just in life just learning to kind of let go of that thinking what the next step's going to be like. And so related to that, I think there was a lot of fear in my head at the time of like, should I do this flip? And anytime you pull up the news, there's like 20 articles of like why the world's going to fall apart and why the economy's going to come crashing. And I had to kind of set that aside thinking through my priorities. Like, I mean, the priority was not to lose money. I hope I don't lose money on this flip. But even if I do a little bit or even break even, that's still a win in my book because I had a year of experience gained. Like I've tried to think through it in the last, 6 months or so of like, if I didn't do this flip, how would I have learned all this thing and all these things? And I think it would have taken, I don't know, 2 or 3 years just shadowing projects and all that. So like I've effectively saved myself a lot of time as well, and that's kind of been valuable.
Yeah. Well, let's go through this journey because for many who renovate their own home, that already is such a nightmare. But when you literally are renovating for an expectation and outcome even after that, that's a lot of uh, weight and risk and burden to carry. So, how would love to hear when you first started, what was your energy like, and what were the biggest things that were going on your mind in terms of how to even approach the project?
I thought you were going to ask, compare your energy from day one to now.
We'll get there.
Um, my energy, I think I was just really naive, to be honest. I think I didn't really know how to put together a strong scope of work. I look at like the way that I've organized my budget in this spreadsheet is it's actually allows me to see how it's progressed over time and what other things have been added. So what I mean by it is like I have a column of like original budget, and then every month or so as things has changed and I've learned more things of like, oh, actually the flooring is going to cost this, or hey, we forgot to budget for different things. I've added to each column so I can actually see like the V1 versus
Ooh.
to the V6 now, and it really is just was a naive kind of perspective. And even at the time, I had reached out to a couple friends who do construction and just kind of checked the initial assumptions with them,
Mhm.
but there's inevitably just always things that pop up um, during a construction project. Um,
Oh, you just brought up this quote that I remembered that helped me get through my renovation. And for some listeners, I renovated a 4,000 square foot home, and I've done some small projects along the way, but this was definitely the biggest where it was just down to the studs. And the saying is, when you're starting a project, it's you're naive enough to start, but stubborn enough to finish. And that just kept going on in my head because if you know how much
nice.
work it was really involved, the stress, the headache, the money, you might not even tackle that project. So you kind of want some of that naivete to just get it going. And then hopefully you have the persistence, the dogmatic, you know, feeling to persist and get it done.
Ooh,
That's how you'll make it to the other side.
that is, I'm feeling that right now
Mhm.
because we have about a month left. So I'm at that point where you just gotta be stubborn, and I'm writing like an absurd amount of checks and like wires and credit card charges. But you're right, like I keep thinking there's no option at this point to like
Mhm.
stop any of that
Mhm.
because we need to get this project done. And just the way, at least for this project, a lot of that stuff is kind of backloaded. There's a lot of construction work heading up to it, but now we're at the point where we're ordering all the finishes and all that. And at least for a first time flipper, maybe if you've done this like a bajillion times, you're comfortable with it. But like the amount of just credit card charges that are coming through, or like things that I need to approve, or like, do you want to go with this tiling or that tiling? Did you want to upgrade to this or that? What's the budget for appliances? Do you want to include washer dryer? It's just like an endless amount of trim. Do you want a half inch quarter? Like
Mhm.
stairs, flooring, it's like 6 millimeter thick, 4 millimeter thick. Oh wait, do you want engineered hardwood? And that's just
That's
like
so funny.
three of the materials out of like 40 that you have to decide.
You're
And
in the fun part because it's the finishes, it's actually the stuff you can actually see and make a home feel so special. But the amount of decisions and details and costs that go into each one, it really can wear on you. Where at some point you have to be like, lean on someone else to make those decisions in some ways.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of going not off script, but like you didn't ask this, but it's reminding me of how important having a good general contractor is.
Mm.
Because and shout out, yeah, to anyone in the Bay Area, especially in the East Bay, who's looking. JJ Construction or Juan that I'm working with, he's just been so great because I think he is starting to adapt to know like what I want
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
style that I want for the home and also the designer that we're working with. So he's already able to make some decisions for us. He comes to the table with like, hey, I've decided to put a pocket door here because a normal door won't work. I think we're going to order this style of door. Does that work? And that already is like a decision that's kind of taken off my plate, but he's still confirming and checking with us. So that's been like a huge weight lifted because I think if you have a contractor who only executes, you're just going to have way, way more work to do.
Yeah. Tell us who's on your roster, your team that's helping make this happen, and what were the most important skills or traits in them that make them so strong for their role.
Yeah, so the contractor, general contractor that I mentioned, and the one other thing that I'll mention is having a good general contractor is important because their subcontractors that they work with, who are all licensed and do really, really good work, you actually might get better rates from those subcontractors because they work so frequently together that people sometimes think, well, if you hire a GC, you're paying effectively for this manager, so your project cost is going to be overall more. But I've actually, in my experience, found that it's can be actually more affordable, and then you also have that person who's kind of running the show for you. So that's been the main person. And then I have a designer who I'm working with, and she's been great just because I know that that is not my strength at all. The different light fixtures, the pendants, the sconces, all those fancy words and different colors and all that. Oftentimes when she sends over the selection, I'm like, ooh, that looks really nice. Like, yes, but I would have never thought of that on my own.
How did you hire these folks and even find them? And did you interview multiple contractors?
So actually, yeah, the way that I found the contractor and also the designer is actually through the realtor that I'm working with. So I know it can sound kind of weird to folks. Well, Cliff's in Oakland. Why is he working with another realtor? That's actually how I found this deal. Um, her team kind of focuses on working with investors and flip projects. So when she sent this out to me, part of the negotiation was like, well, I'll let her get the commission on the buy side. And then also if she helps to kind of project manage and just be there, then also let her take on the listing as well. So she's actually gonna help me sell it.
Mhm.
So that to me was like eats into your margins and profit, but I was very okay with that, having that extra oversight,
Mm.
being a big, being my first project and also a pretty big one. And then she brought in the contractor and designer as well. So I didn't actually interview anyone else. So there was like kind of that initial leap of faith that I had to take from the beginning.
The power of a good realtor is, yeah, also is access to that Rolodex, because
Oh
finding
yeah.
good vendors is so crucial. And especially for this one in particular, knowing the type of, yeah, contractor designer who knows the type of project that you're working on because they've done multiple of them, it's key.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So important because I think what I've read is, and I might be, hopefully this doesn't happen to me, but I've heard for flippers, usually how they go wrong is like you're not designing the home to your end buyer perfectly enough. So, for example, if you're trying to sell like $1 million home, you start using $2 million finishes, you're going to go over budget. And if you use $800,000 finishes, it's not going to look nice for them.
Mhm.
So, what's nice about having this realtor and designer is they actually specialize in Oakland as well.
Mhm.
So, it really feels like we're kind of aligned on like what the quality needs to be, but not over quality as well.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. How do you do that? How do you balance staying on budget with making design choices that attract this pool of buyers?
Um, Oftentimes it's been them sending design choices and then me asking, is there a more affordable option? And then we compare the two and make a decision. Because I think what you're getting at is oftentimes, yeah, the designer has an eye for making things look really good. And initially, there were some times where I feel like the decision was more geared towards only the design without taking into account the budget. So we've kind of had this kind of push and pull. I think a very healthy push and pull
Yeah.
relationship to get there.
Ooh, yeah. Tell us more about that, because they're in working with a new vendor, or even sometimes it's, one you've worked with many years. When you're dealing with high stakes, there's going to be some push and pull. How do you navigate those kinds of hard conversations?
Um, yeah, it's something that I'm working on too as I get older. I think learning to try to be more direct with what I'm saying, and also knowing when to have those conversations. We've actually had to have a couple, not tough conversations, but more like candid ones about like delivery timeline and getting the design and those types of things like ready earlier. Because to your question about how to make sure it fits with the budget, what was happening was sometimes the design elements were sent so late where we're like, okay, we need to order flooring by Friday, and then the options are sent on Thursday or Friday morning. So you really don't have time to compare other things. And so my point was like, well, we know the square footage of the home. We know we need flooring. Why are we getting that sent to us on Thursday? Why not a week or two earlier?
Yeah.
And so we've had a couple of those conversations, and luckily we've kind of seen a shift in um, how we communicate. So that's been helpful because like if you have enough heads up, then I think you can try to find a better option potentially. Otherwise, if you get it last minute, you just kind of have to roll with it. And what I've also found too in trying to keep with the budget is for a first time flipper, there's so many components needed. So like for example, my budget, for example, for like doors, trims, door handles, and all of those things, you kind of need to plan all of that in aggregate to see if it'll match the total budget. But if you just order the doors first and then next come the trim and then the next come the door handles, one step, two step, third step, you might get to the third step and have already overspent the budget. So that's where kind of the planning in advance has been helpful too, because then you can say, okay, wait a minute, well, these door handles are what they're going to cost, so we need to actually get cheaper doors. But
Hmm.
if you do them sequentially and not as a whole group, you can get in some trouble there.
Yeah, definitely. And for everyone has, for the most part, good intentions, but as the person whose wallet, this is coming out of your wallet, no one's going to be caring or thinking about it as much as you are. And this goes for
Oh
anyone
yeah.
flipping or renovating their own home. All of these other vendors, they've got multiple projects they're trying to deliver, but to know that these conversations and to realign is very common, because you are the ultimate person responsible and paying for everything. And if you are not having these conversations or you're afraid to. It's very common, but they are so important and necessary to kind of get everyone back on up to speed and to know what the overall goal and vision is.
Yeah. Did you have to, sounds like you had to have some of those conversations too
Oh,
with your
yeah,
contractors?
definitely. Especially with contractors, I feel like, because they, I would say for most contractors, communication is not their strong suit. So even just updating what's going on, sometimes the timing, because ultimately what time is money, and usually that can be the biggest delay. It's like, hey, why hasn't this
Mm,
started? Because you're waiting on X, Y, and Z. And it's like, what's going on there? So you can't help but constantly be thinking about the next steps. And sometimes you don't even know what to be thinking about. But it's very
yeah.
common with almost every project that there's like, hey, what's going on? You got to keep folks motivated. And I will say, most contractors, they work on urgency. And if you're not the one putting the urgency on them, they likely will have someone else on another project putting that. So it's you kind of have to be very stern in many ways. It's just the nature of this business is, you know, what.
That's such a good point. Yeah, kind of being the squeaky wheel can be helpful and just being persistent with it. And you, it shows how nice you are, Con, when you described it as communication is not most contractor strong suit. That is understatement in my experience.
Yeah, it's tough because while I'm really good at advocating for others, for myself, I'm like, Brian, my husband, you go be the bad guy. But yeah, someone's got to play that role. Uh, Curious, what were the biggest surprises for you during your flip? I know you're getting towards the end of it, and I'm sure there's still some popping up. But what has been the biggest shocker for you in this process?
Um, I think I underestimated security and deterrence for the home. I've just heard this. I don't think this is an Oakland thing. I've heard this all across the Bay
Yeah.
Area and LA and other places.
Mm.
It's like for folks who are listening, like it's common for people to break into your home to steal the appliances or also copper. They'll actually rip open the walls. And from my understanding, it's like it's pretty easy to ascertain when there might be copper exposed because if you're doing a down to the studs remodel, you know that the walls are open up. And until they do their rough in inspection, which is you need that with your walls open and all the copper installed. You need to pass that in order to move on to closing it up with drywall. You know that there's a pretty open, probably 3 week window where it's like you can just kind of go at it. Um, Initially, I set up a security camera at the home, and then we had a couple people just like at night, just like stop by and just like peruse outside. Luckily, they didn't break in. So then I installed like a security fence. We added floodlights and all of that, and knock on wood, I think those deterrents have been good. And also just letting the neighbors know as well and setting up like a Simply Safe and all of that. But I think that was just a learning for me. I just thought, oh, no one's going to touch this construction site. But
Oh,
and luckily no one has really. But just good to
that's
be protected because you know that person coming in to steal copper might be they might profit like a few $1,000s, but the amount of damage would be like tens of thousands of dollars plus like losing 3 weeks of work. It'd be like really, really painful.
yeah, that's a huge one and such a important one to share. Visually, yeah, any construction site can often be a window of opportunity for someone looking for it. And yeah, huge on you to kind of think about ways to preempt that. Yeah, because we
Yeah.
hear that all over, everywhere. What's been the most rewarding part of this experience for you?
It's weird, and I don't know what maybe you can help me describe my emotion and what the feeling is. But I mean, I guess it's just a sense of pride. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's like my baby because it's not that level, but every time I go there and see this thing get a little bit more progress and to literally see some of the photos from almost a year ago where it was just this completely kind of run down home to now I stop by and the neighbors might go, "Oh wow, it's really coming along. It's really looking nice." And those like comments, and as I look at it, I'm like, "Oh, I am really proud of this house that literally we
Yeah.
took down past the studs, redid the floor plan, and we've kind of reimagined it. And it's helping me, I think, just gain confidence in myself too, because 2 years ago, I never thought I could do something like this. And being able to hopefully execute it well and the end product being good, I think gives me a lot of confidence. And it's actually been a lot more fun than I expected to.
Mm. What's been fun about it for you?
It is well, I love being a realtor because no 2 days are the same and it kind of keeps things kind of different. And that also this like has added like another layer of that. There's the design aspect and the creativity that comes from that, kind of the running the numbers to make sure that your budget's on track and that the home will sell hopefully profitably. There's a deal hunting aspect of like finding the deal. Um, it's people oriented, working with the contractor and all that. So it's worked my brain in a lot of fun ways that I hadn't done in combination before.
Yeah, it is like one your baby because you have literally transformed the small house, and I having seen some photos, it's a huge transformation, and it's so exciting, and so I imagine just so fulfilling for you to see like, oh gosh, all of those not sleepless nights, but all the labor and love that you put into it starting to come to fruition, and hearing from
Mm,
your neighbors, working with the vendors that you're working with. It's I can see it being just so satisfying and fun in that way.
satisfying is a good word. Yeah, it is satisfying. Yeah.
If for folks, oh, one question. If you had this being your first project, has it changed any thoughts of what it's like to flip a home for you?
Ooh, I'm planning to do more of these projects. Yeah, I've really liked it. I do think I'm trying to find a balance. Like, I don't think I want to be like a professional flipper. I know some people who are doing like 10, 20 flips a month, and that just becomes a whole nother beast of like what you have to track and what your credit card bill is like, and I'm sure the stress level of that. But if it's something where one or two of these a year, I think that could be really engaging and fun. And I think I'm still trying to think through, do I want to do quicker projects or has this long form project of like a 1 year type of thing been good? I think I'm leaning towards a longer project for what you just mentioned of like the fulfillment and the satisfaction of it. To just do a quick flip where you just like redo just all cosmetic stuff, I mean, I'm sure profit wise and everything that probably is better. But I've really enjoyed like redesigning the floor plan, figure out where the windows will go. And in general, I'm trying to do things more for like my own fulfillment than trying to figure out like what I should be doing from, a money perspective or those types of things.
And for you, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are curious, what did the financing look like? Was this something you saved up for? Did you take hard money loan, pay in all cash? Share what you can.
I, yeah, so this one I took out a hard money loan. Shout out to Conventus. I've used them for a few different loans in the past because they're like a private lender and they offer hard money also for bridge loans or also they do some longer term financing for like rental properties. So I reached out to them to do a hard money loan and I think I got 80% for the purchase and then up to 80 or 90% for the rehab, but I actually haven't drawn on the rehab at all. So I've kind of self-funded the rehab
Got it.
thus far. And then the purchase was at 9% plus 1 point upfront, which a year ago, all things considered, I think that was still pretty good. I was expecting something maybe in the low double digits, like anywhere from like 10 to 12%. And then the terms for the draw for the flip or the construction would be the same as well.
Wow, that's incredible that you also had the option to fund the rehab, not out of your
Yeah,
pocket.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those are all terms that you set up like out upfront with the lender. And then you have to like furnish receipts and invoices and all that stuff, and then you can like draw from that piggy bank.
Yeah. If you could do this flip all over again, what would you do differently?
Um, I you know, doing it, I think in Oakland has been a little bit challenging. The permit process, for example, was incredibly long. I paid for expedited service, and even then, it took about 4.5 months to get the permits. So I can, I've heard that it would take double if you're not willing to pay expedited. To give you a sense, like just the permits alone were almost like $20,000 for this project, which is like I think a crazy high sum to be paying, and it's unclear like what that is fully going towards. But I do like the idea of maybe doing a project like in Berkeley. I've heard Albany is much
I
more
think those will be
streamlined.
even tougher.
Really? In terms
Yeah,
of permits?
I think so.
Oh no,
I could
why?
see Berkeley being really stringent.
Oh, very strict. Yeah, okay. That's true. Yeah. I had met someone who just did a project in Albany and she
Mm.
said her permits took 2 weeks,
Oh, wow.
2 to 4 weeks, yeah.
Oh, incredible.
So from my other friends who do construction in other parts of the country, I think that's what they've said. They're like, yeah, 2 to 4 weeks. And then they ask like, well, why did it take you 5 months? Like, what are you waiting on?
Mhm.
I don't
I
know. I
think
don't know if anyone has the answer to that.
Yeah, I know some cities because they use a third party to review to do the permit review and expediting. I think that's sometimes the delay. I know
Mm,
for some clients in La Cañada, it's taken them about a year to get their permits reviewed because La Cañada
oh, shoot.
outsources their reviews of of plans. So
Yikes.
I think LA County is comparable. Uh, yeah. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone considering their first flip?
The team, make sure that you have a
Mm,
solid team behind you. Um, and more importantly, just having that good contractor. I think you'll know based on their communication and how they, you know, think through design choices with you and change orders and all of that stuff. You'll see their expertise and their willingness to work with you. Um,
Knowing there's so many surprises in working on a project, I always think of when I'm hiring someone, what would that person be like when I have to bring up the not so great stuff? Like, would I feel
mm,
comfortable doing that? And so, curious for you, Cliff, if there's a question that you think people should ask when they're hiring a contractor, what would that be? Something to look out for?
ooh, that's a good one. I think um, their willingness to give you time and how they spend that time with you. Like if they're all business and just like chop chop, you might think that's good because that's like how they would run the construction site. But what I have found in my projects is like it's more of a relationship that you're building with this contractor,
Mhm.
especially if you're trying to do projects for the long term. So you don't if they treat it transactional from the jump, then it's likely that it'll remain transactional. But if you're spending time at the job site and they're walking through different things with you, like with Juan. I was just so impressed. Like early on, he was like, "Well, hey, you guys were thinking about putting like the doors on in this direction, but the reason why I think it should go this way is because like the flow of the people coming in is how they would enjoy the room." Or like, "Hey, do you think you should extend the stairs this way because of the flow of the room?" And I was like, "Those are really good ideas." And even though some of the changes we didn't go with, you can tell that he was committed to the project and thinking
Yeah.
about it in that way. And that was like, I think the first time I've actually had a contractor even pose those questions to me. So it not only showed his experience, but also his care
Yeah.
at the same time.
That's huge, even for because you think, oh, for yeah, renovation, there's very little of that, but to see that being so important and crucial and a huge value add, it really goes to show that these relationships are so crucial, even when it's purely an investment type of purchase or renovation.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's like so many things that are just so like you can't plan for it. Like for example, part of the wall in one of the bathrooms, and this happens all the time in the Bears. There's just some settlement, so the home is not perfectly straight. And so we now have to order some custom glass for the standing shower.
Yeah.
But like those little things are like it's his attention to detail. He was like, here, if you measure it from the ground, it's 24 inches, but then when you get to all the way to the top, 8 feet high, it's 24 and a quarter inch. So like a straight piece of glass is gonna leave a gap at the top.
Mm,
And I was like, thank you, Juan. Like no one could no there's no way anyone could have caught that when you bought the home. But
yeah.
his attention to detail is like shining through of like, okay, thanks. Now we need to plan for that and budget for that going forward.
Mm,
And he's like, and I know someone who can do it and install it. And I've already worked him down. His original price was X, and now I've negotiated down. And then I do my own research on the back end, and it's true. Great price,
mm,
great reviews.
mhm.
It's like, helped us move forward 2 steps just with that one thing.
Wow, when you have that element of expertise, it just instills so much trust. And gosh, I can only imagine how much that allows you to just breathe easy and like sleep at night, knowing other people care just as much as you on your
Mm,
project.
yeah, yeah.
Any final parting words? Where's your energy now? Energy now that we're about a year in and you've got a month left?
I'm at that point where I'm just like stubborn right now, needing to get to the finish line.
Get to
Um,
it.
we got about a month left,
Yeah.
and we should
Well,
be ready to go.
it's going to be so exciting. This final month is when you just like see it all come together, and it's I feel like this final month is where it's so satisfying. It really hits because everything's crystallizing. You start to see the shiny parts of the home because it's all the like finishes and fixtures, and it's all the stuff that makes the home special.
Ooh, is that right? Okay, because I've never gone to this point before. So I
Yeah.
know like I've heard that yeah, the last month is the kind of the most exciting because it becomes a home after all of this prep work and all that. So I'm glad to hear that from you because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
now more excited.
Oh, definitely. Well, there you have it. It was so great to chat with you, Cliff, about your flipping experience. I know we often get asked about what it's like to flip, to renovate, and for you to be so open and honest about what it's like, given it's your first one. It's a huge undertaking. For folks who might have questions for you, where can they reach out to you directly?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can reach out to me directly at cliff@willamar.com, or I'm on Instagram at my handle is cliff1127. But if you want to follow us along at willamar.com, or also our Willamar Instagram, that's at willamar underscore underscore, and you can reach out to us directly that way as well.
Yes. So thank you for tuning into another episode of The Thoughtful Realtor. If you want more of these personal episodes, subscribe and let us know in the reviews. We read each and every one. And our goal really is to just share all of that we know and have experienced because we're still learning and sharing the love. And until next time.
Bye bye.